everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince!
Vince, we're in week 4 already of the multi-topic extravaganza, the sequel, the second multi-topic extravaganza.
The extravaganzaning.
We are still answering folks' questions. We're going to see how many we can knock out today. This may be the last week, or if we don't get through very many today, we'll do one more. So, here we go. Starting the clock, bringing up the questions. Are you ready, Vince?
Indeed.
Vince, do you think you can guess what the first question is?
No.
No? No idea?
Would you let your kid watch SpongeBob?
Really close. No, not even close. Was that your Atlas impression?
Yes.
Okay, see, Vince is a great Atlas. Because he's got the build and all that. If I do it, I just look like...
I'm actually getting a little bit muscular again. I'm kind of excited. I'm back to working out.
Red Robin 696 asks, are sidekicks still relevant, or is it an outdated idea?
I think they're as valid as either front or back kicks. It depends on where the bad guy is, really.
I'm sorry. I've gotten so used to just assuming your jokes are going to be awful, but that was really good. Well, no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I think that's a good question, though.
Yeah. I think that sidekicks are not necessarily unwelcome. I think it really depends on the tone of the story. I don't think that everybody needs a sidekick. And I would say that a prodigy that trying to groom somebody to take your place is certainly very welcome, depending. I mean, I think people start thinking that sidekicks are outdated when they look at a character like Batman and say, well, here's a guy that really doesn't have enough room in his life for a sidekick. But then you look at somebody like Green Arrow, and why shouldn't he have a sidekick? You're like, let me teach you how to shoot, and let me give you some sort of moral compass so that you know what not to shoot.
Although it's interesting you bring up Green Arrow, because I think
it's been a while since I've read any Green Arrow.
Well, no, I'm not going to say you're wrong about that. But what I was going to say is that it seems like in our modern day and age, we keep writing characters that are more loner types. It seems like it's heroes bordering on the anti-hero. It's so much more about the character flaws these days than it used to be, where it's like a character trying to be a hero, and then the question is he really a hero because he has these flaws, and that seems to be what a lot of people really gravitate toward these days with superheroes. It's hard to give those people sidekicks because when you get somebody like Green Arrow, and I'm not talking about 52 Green Arrow, but the Green Arrow before that, he killed a person, and that was a giant story arc. And that was one of those things where it was him against his old sidekick, who was now a villain, Arsenal. So, take all that for what it's worth. But I'm just saying that I think that we've been playing with the ideas of sidekicks for so long and turning it on its head and messing with it that I can't think of a lot of characters that have real sidekicks anymore. Like we don't really do it that way anymore. I mean, currently Batman's got Damian Wayne, but that's not even a relationship that, it's a very dysfunctional relationship. Name a current hero who has a sidekick that they get along right now. I can't think of anything.
People that get along with him, that's difficult. I know that at one point there was sort of this general and soldier relationship between Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl. So that... functional, not necessarily friendly. Superman and Superboy and Supergirl should all get along.
But those were never sidekicks. They're always in their own books and they do their own things. And I don't want to say never, but especially in the last several years. I mean, they're always just in their own books. When they get together, it's as much a team up as anything.
If I were writing Superboy, Superman would be a huge part of it.
Yeah, I see why people don't want to just have them together all the time. But yeah.
For guidance sake, not necessarily.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like, he wouldn't be there every page saying, do this, do that. But it doesn't make any sense to me how a guy who has super speed and every other, feasible superpower wouldn't have some sort of presence in the guy's life as some sort of guiding factor, especially since they're born from the same gene.
Mr. BK47 asks, do you like a more violent Superman, like in Superman the Animated Series, whose first action is to punch things, or do you like a more calm and reserved Superman like Christopher Reeve, or the All-Star version?
My preference is the All-Star version, but I would say that I don't really agree with the more violent Superman in the comics, because of my favorite episode, or at least maybe that wasn't in the comics, I meant the animated series, but and I think this was in Justice League, but I think this is a good way to describe him. was he fought Darkseid and then just started wailing on Darkseid and said to him, you know, usually I have to pull my punches so that I don't actually hurt people, but you can take it, so I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. And that's what's really cool about that Superman, is that...
so you don't think he really is that violent?
No, I think he knows exactly how hard he needs to hit people in order to get the job done.
And maybe it just looks violent because it's a TV show and it's supposed to look dynamic, you know?
Like, most of the people he hits, he could probably hit a lot harder. And maybe
they usually get up and walk away.
Exactly.
Only one person died in that show, and Darkseid killed him. I'm just throwing that out there.
See, so I prefer Superman to be less violent, but, you know, I wouldn't want Superman just walking around killing people.
What I love about the Christopher Reeve version is that he rarely throws a punch. I mean, what I like about him is that you know, you go through his whole movie and he only uses his superpowers when he really has to. Well, there are places where he kind of uses it for his own game, but they're kind of you know funny scenes. You know what I mean? But when you're talking about when you know major bad things are happening, it's always to save a person. It's rarely to actually fight a person. He doesn't deck out Lex Luthor. You know, you don't have anything like that. And then I mean, I don't like the turning the world around thing, but we do get to see him enraged. You know, you get to the end of that movie and he gets super angry and he can't control his powers at that point. I like that, you know. I like having a really reserved Superman who's trying to bottle all that up, and then you know, and then Lois Lane dies and he has this terrible thing he has to deal with. And I mean, like, so yeah, my favorite version is always going to be the Reeve Superman, because we got to see the juxtaposition. We got to see him get there, you know. That's really cool. I think that it's interesting that he mentions just, you know, people with superpowers just throwing punches, because that was your big complaint about the new Supergirl book, which you said you really liked a lot, but then you complained that
all it was throwing punches.
Every time something happened that she had to deal with, she would just like hit things.
Yeah, like, it seemed like I understand this need to defend yourself, but she doesn't even question. She's just like, bah! Hits things. I'm going to hit you because you're new.
I want to throw that out there. Fire Fist Shikamaru asks, what are your thoughts on the idea that all fictional characters that are fictional in our world may actually exist and be real in an alternate dimension? I don't believe in it, but it's an interesting theory. How would you feel knowing that the Marvel and DC universes were real and out there somewhere?
Let's go. We will find it, and then we'll let you know.
You know, it's an idea that I think is kind of fun to play with in fiction. I liked how they did it in 1985. I don't know if you read that, Marvel 1985.
No.
I recommended it once. I couldn't remember if you ever read it or not. But yeah, I don't know. I think that usually in a story it works, and as far as like in the real world, obviously they're you know, ideas in people's heads and people write them down, and so you know, there are lots of crazy multiversal theories, but you know, of course I wouldn't believe in that either. But I think in fiction it works best when we find out that it wasn't really fictional, but we thought it was. You know, where somebody was somehow, like writers or artists were somehow tapping into an alternate dimension when they invented the universe that we thought they invented, and so then it turns out that it actually exists because they were tapping into it and then writing what they were, you know, what they thought they were imagining, but then it turned out that they were actually tapping into something. I think that's a really interesting idea.
Me too. And as far as reality goes, sure, why not?
So anyway, Mr. Goodplot. With the following in mind, Transformers Prime, Nick's new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which looks awful, by the way, and Beware the Batman, is CGI becoming an excuse to adapt franchises onto the small screen that have already been there countless times before? Yes. But I don't understand why. I mean, like, just because it's been there several times doesn't mean that you have to stop using traditional animation. You know, I mean, like we've had several takes of Batman, totally different versions, you know, serious ones, campy ones, somewhere in between. You know, is the only place left to go CG now? I don't get it.
Yeah, because, you know, God forbid there be creativity or you know, interesting things done. You just got to change the way things look. That's really all I'll boil it down to.
I'm going to be fine with some of those. And a lot of people like the Clone Wars show. I've only seen a couple episodes and didn't care for it, but I haven't really watched it.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, it didn't jazz me. But anyway, I would say that with these other shows that aren't out yet, I mean, I'm not going to judge them. They're not out yet. From the preliminary scenes I've seen, they look mediocre to me. And I don't like that every Ninja Turtle now has a bladed weapon. That really bothers me. They took away Michelangelo's nunchucks and they gave him something like nunchucks, but they have blades on the end of them. And then they did the same thing with Donatello's bow staff. Okay, look, it's a kid's show. They're not going to be able to use them. You know what I mean? Like, why would you put more blades on the weapons? They already can't do anything with them.
Look out for next year's Ghostbusters show where they throw posies at all of the ghosts, and all the ghosts happen to be enlarged chipmunks.
So I don't know. I've heard. I haven't watched the Green Lantern, the new Green Lantern series, and I've heard really great things about it, despite the fact that it's CGI. So like, it's not like there's no good CGI. The computer animated Spider-Man show that was on MTV was okay.
Yeah.
I really liked Beast Wars back in the late '90s. There's stuff. So I mean, like, I'm not against it just because it's CG, and I don't think that that it necessarily has to be an excuse like he's suggesting. I just think that if it turns out to be as mediocre with Beware the Batman and Turtles, if those end up being as mediocre as I think they're going to be, just looking at the little bit of preliminaries that we've gotten so far, then yes, that's what it is. It's just people going, well, people watch it because it's CG, and we don't need any interesting stuff behind it. We don't need good storytelling to make it go. We just need computer animation.
I'm okay with computer animation, but I prefer regular animation.
I also think it's harder to do well, especially like on a regular TV schedule. It's hard to make it look good, and so you have to really work at it, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Ari Light 195 asks, "What are your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings books and films, and are you excited about the upcoming Hobbit films?" I saw the trailer for the new Hobbit movie. It looks fantastic. I'm not a big fan of those, but I'm a little excited about it, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm extremely excited. I'd say that I really enjoyed the Hobbit cartoon show when I was a kid. I haven't read any of the books because, who has the time to read? That's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be sad. Anyway, so...
No, it is.
But, I don't know, Lord of the Rings is not something that really caught my eye anyway. I like the Lord of the Rings movies, but I'm never going to read Lord of the Rings. I'll be honest with you. It's not something that excites me enough to read it.
I read The Hobbit. I like Lord of the Rings books better than The Hobbit. So I actually kind of like that they're changing some things. This is one of those few times when I'm like, yeah, give more of a crux to it, because the Hobbit is a very, very simple kind of story, and it's not bad, but if they had just like adapted it exactly the way it is, it being the last thing that they're gonna do for that franchise, it would have been really kind of lackluster, I think. All right, Stitch 99. Should people have to see the original film to understand the sequel?
Depends on the premise of the sequel, I guess. I think you can have a movie that stands on its own, Dark Knight, and I think that you sometimes have to see the original. I don't think there's a should necessarily, because that's more of a value judgment. Mm-hmm. But I would say that it really depends on whether or not the first movie's characterization really is important for you to understand the second movie's.
I agree 100%. I also think that it depends on whether or not it's a running story that takes more than one film to tell, So sometimes you get things like the Bourne movies and things like that, and Lord of the Rings, like we were talking about a minute ago, where they were it's a planned out thing. Where the first movie is maybe mostly kind of a story on its own, but it's obviously going to a place, and so then when you get to the sequel, no, we shouldn't have to spend minutes upon minutes explaining to the audience who all these characters are. So, IncuFish23 asks, what are some of your favorite non-superhero comics?
Conan.
Vince has a lot of them.
Conan all the way. As recently discovered, Hackslash is pretty good. Zorro, he's a superhero. Proto-superhero, as Cap has called him before.
Yeah.
Oh man, what else? Ghostbusters is great right now.
Yep, sure is.
Gosh, I know I have more. There was a Werewolf by Night series that was pretty good.
You were a fan of early Walking Dead, right?
Oh yeah, Walking Dead is still good. So,
okay, I didn't know if you were still reading it or not.
Yeah, reading it every week.
I am such a superhero guy. I don't have a lot. I just don't read a lot of non-superhero. I mean, every now and then I'll pick up something. I mean, when people will send me things and I'll read things, but I don't have a ton of favorites. I mean, I really like Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters feels like a superhero book to me.
That's fair.
I don't know. There are very few things I could say that wouldn't just sound like they're kind of superhero films. I like Screamland. That one's good.
Screamland was good.
I like Spawn, which is not currently a superhero book. It's very much a horror comic right now.
Incidentally, both Screamlands were good. Screamland 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know I have more. I'm just having trouble thinking of them.
Thrum asks, what do you think of the trend actors that played superheroes in movies or on television writing comic books for those characters? I guess, what do you think of the trend? I think it's neat when they're good at it, when they're really good at it. That's happening actually right now with with Juliette Landau, who played Drusilla. She's doing a Drusilla spinoff for Dark Horse. She's writing all 5 issues. I'm trying to get her on late night. I haven't heard back from her yet, but I'm trying. But anyway, that's exciting to me, and I think a couple people in the Buffyverse have done that. And then there was a DS9 novel where the guy who played Garrick got to write his own backstory. I think that kind of thing is really cool, especially when they're really good at it. There have been other places where I've seen it where it hasn't been as good, like John Delancey got to pair up with Peter David and write a Q book, and it was all over the place. I just didn't think it really worked quite all that well. But
sometimes I think that people think of actors as organ grinders, or like the monkey to an organ grinder. Mm-hmm. And ideally, actors should be able to interpret a script. There's a reason why when people go to school for theater, they take script interpretation, because it's not just about reciting lines realistically. It's about understanding a character. If you understand where a character is coming from, then you can understand how the character is going to react right now, and that's going to adapt the way that you're going to deliver your lines. So whenever you hear a character in a movie, or a character who's playing an actor in a movie who does this annoying thing, what's my motivation? They're alluding to that, but in reality, they should understand their motivation because they've read the script. So there we go. I think it's a cool trend that they can write their own stories. Why not?
And usually when you have that's a great point. Usually when you have a really good actor in a movie that's floundering, it's because the script was bad. Mm. Because they can't figure out what their motivation is because the script wasn't good enough to unveil that for them. So
Wilmot once said to me, "You can have a bad movie with a good script, but you cannot have a good movie with a bad script."
Movie Geek 17 asks, what stories, comics, film, novels, etc. have inspired you guys creatively?
A bunch of jokes came to mind that I can't actually say on camera.
Okay, well then why don't you just answer the question, Vince?
What things have inspired me creatively? That's a little difficult because I don't necessarily write things that I read. Mm-hmm. I tend to write stuff that's a little different than what I read. I guess Hulk has inspired me, but to say that, it would be the same as saying the Wolfman has inspired me or Jekyll and Hyde has inspired me. How about you, Kat?
I'll point to the same stuff I always point. I always point to the same stuff. But I mean, like, naturally Star Trek, but mostly in just a in just like a broad sense of having a universe that has a bunch of species in it. When I did my book, when I did my novel, I set out to write my Star Trek, and it wasn't that I wanted to write something that was anything like Star Trek. It was my Star Trek in the sense of it was a large, sprawling universe that I could play in that had a lot of different species and strange characters and things like that. Those kind of ensemble sci-fi just in general for that kind of thing. But then, of course, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy I always point to. My writing style is closer to that than it is for anything when I'm doing comedy. I'm not just channeling Douglas Adams. I'm very different from Douglas Adams, but I do but you can definitely, if you read any of my stuff, you can definitely see that there's a little bit of that there. Pretty much anybody I've ever talked to who's read anything of mine that's read Douglas Adams is like, you like Hitchhiker, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I do. So those are the big ones for me, and then of course, a lot of superhero comics. Specific writers, Peter David and Greg Rucka and guys like that.
I'm glad he had a lot to say because it gave you some time to think. Garth Ennis has a lot to do with my interest. David Mamet has a lot to do with my interests. And, oh man. Garth Ennis and David Mamet are huge. I would like to say that The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid by a guy whose name currently escapes me. But I like that book, and whenever I write something from a kid's perspective, it usually has a voice similar to that one because I just think it was such a good example of how to write in retrospect. I'll think of that guy's name about 2 days from now.
Pat Lynch, the reviewer, asks, who do you think is the Mask, Batman or Bruce Wayne? Well, in most continuities, Batman would say it's Batman. Most of the time, Batman would say it's Bruce Wayne. In most continuities, Batman says, I think of myself as Batman. And I like that early episode of Batman Beyond where he says, in my head, Bruce Wayne is not what I call myself. I always like that. But naturally, because there's so many different incarnations of Batman, it just depends on the incarnation we're talking about, you know. In Brave and the Bold, I'd say it's still Batman because you never see him as Bruce Wayne in that. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. But then in like The Batman, that feels a lot more like it's Bruce Wayne, like Bruce Wayne is the character, and then he puts on a costume, you know. So I think it depends a great deal on the incarnation we're talking about.
I like that example. That's perfect. That's a great answer. I think I'll add that the way I see Batman is the guy sitting at the computer trying to figure out a case with his cowl down.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He is an entity. He is his own person who sort of masquerades as two. He's not just scary, I'm Batman and I'm losing my mind. He's not Bruce Wayne, billionaire playboy. He's a guy that puts on a face for everybody, so he doesn't necessarily have a defined personality.
And so he's playing two extremes,
so,
and only he knows what he's really like.
Yeah, actually, I'd say Alfred's probably the only other person that knows what he's really like. So, yeah.
That's good. Cool. You're going to love this one, dude. Wood 02230223, is there a reason why the Ultimate Universe in Marvel still exists?
No, there's not.
No, there's not.
I suppose the only reason is Miles Morales.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that, does it have any point in still being around, or is it the same point as it used to be? No, absolutely not. It's nothing like it used to be. But is it pointless? Should it not be there? Well, there's good stuff in there right now. So I'd say right now, I'm happy that it's there. I'm liking those books.
I mean, you still have writers that are trying to do things differently with like Ultimate is supposed to be alternate versions of characters from the Marvel U. So when you have people like Jeff Lowe go in there and straight rip people out of the regular universe and throw it into the Ultimate Universe, don't even change them, just say, well, I can give them whatever backstory, but the characterization and the look and the feel and everything, the powers, everything is the same. Then you have the problem of you are just replicating your own universe. And also, when you start getting big, huge crossovers, what's the point once it's become like a major universe? It's supposed to be like this little pocket universe that we get fun stories from, where people like Mark Millar will turn Red Skull on his head, and Bendis will turn Green Goblin on his head. So I don't know, it just saddens me a little bit when I look at the overall arcing of Ultimate stories.
Yeah, what I like about what it used to be is that, and I didn't read a lot of the early stuff. I've subsequently gone back and read some of it. What I like about what it used to be is that you could go in and read any of them without reading any of the others. There was no reason that if you're reading Spider-Man, you'd have to read X-Men, and they hardly crossed over. Maybe early on they never did. I don't know.
Yeah, after Kitty Pryde became a big thing in Spider-Man, it became really annoying. I hate Kitty Pryde in the Ultimate Universe.
But now it's just like the normal universe where everything crosses into everything, and it's just another Marvel universe. And I'm with you. I don't think it feels different enough. It seems like the same place with some key fundamental differences that they even can't figure out how all that happened with the whole what caused mutations and stuff like that. It's the same universe mostly. I mean, like, you know, okay, so everybody's hunting mutants because of a horrible thing Magneto did, but that doesn't make the universe different so much as it's just the big plot that's going on right now. You could say the same thing about what's going on in regular continuity, where, like, you know, unlike what they used to do, there's only so many mutants running around now because most of them died and stuff like that. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the current status quo. It doesn't feel like a different universe. I'd say.
The idea with every superhero being, or every mutant and superhero being born of the same thing, so everybody with powers is a mutant, that annoys me, because what they've effectively done is looped everything into what should be told in one book. They shouldn't have Ultimate X-Men and Ultimates. It should just be the Ultimate Universe with Ultimate Spider-Man running around on the side. So...
we've got time for maybe a couple more events. 8 Comic Book 8 asks, what do you think of the idea of comic book movies having Elseworld/alternate universe movies? Like, if there were multiple movies of a character done over a time period, all done by different filmmakers with different viewpoints and visions. I always think that it would make some of the movies unimportant, but there would be opportunity to make different versions of characters. I don't think it's realistic to think that anything like that would ever happen. I think that it's too much of a risk for a studio to put that much money into an Elseworlds kind of movie. There are a lot of them that would be really fun to see, you know? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really cool Elseworlds, but, and what if type stories too, but movies are expensive. You know, they cost a lot to make, and so you don't want to put one out unless you know it's going to make money when you're talking about comic book movies.
Yeah. I'd like to see some Elseworlds movies, but really you can wish in one hand and spit in the other and see which one fills up first.
So yes, I think it's a great idea. Do I think that that it would sell? It depends on what the concept was. It depends on what it was. I think it could. Realistically, in the kind of climate we have now, I don't see it. And not only is it the money thing, but it's also the franchise thing. Mm-hmm. These days, Hollywood makes movies to then make more movies. They don't do standalone movies when it comes to these kinds of things.
If something sells, they want to make a second one. I mean, there's been plenty of movies that have been made where that one made money, and they say, well, now we have to put out a sequel, because that'll make money too. And then you get this sequel that's horribly disjointed from what the first one was. But
what I'm saying is you don't want that with an Elseworld story, because those are meant to be standalone. You don't need a big gaping franchise for an Elseworlds film, and that's what they would want to do with it. So
sometimes I think they have a little more longevity than what they were given, but that's neither here nor there.
SXC Blues says, if superheroes were real and ran for government or world leader positions, who do you think would have the best shot at getting elected based upon their overall actions in comics? Who would you vote for? That's a great question. I love that.
I think Luthor has a good chance of getting elected. There's just something about what he did in the comics that I think makes him, electable.
Only if No Man's Land happens. we have to cause an earthquake on a big island, and then he has to save it, and then he can be elected president. But that's what it would take. Yeah. No. Seriously though, when we're talking about superhero characters, I think for the most part it has to be a character who has kind of come out of the superhero closet, so to speak, and everybody knows who they are. I think Tony Stark would have a shot.
Ex Machina, because he was elected to office.
Oh, he was?
I think so. I think that's the premise. I haven't read it, so don't shoot me. Whatever.
I'm sorry, I just don't know a lot of your Iron Man stories that well.
It's not Iron Man.
What are we talking about?
I think it's a Vertigo book.
You mean the character Ex Machina?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about like an Iron Man story.
No.
Thanks for jumping in, Vince, and just like, no, I'm kidding. In Marvel, I think the character that would have the best shot at getting elected president would be Nick Fury.
That's fair.
I think Nick Fury would have the best shot.
I think there's a lot of people that could get elected president. I just don't think there's a lot of people that would want to be elected president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think Captain America has a good chance of getting elected.
Naturally.
But
he wouldn't want it.
I
think Mr. Fantastic, but he wouldn't want it.
Yeah. So,
any of your major leaders. When you get over into DC, it's a little bit more complicated because a lot of their major characters weren't born in America. Superman can't be elected president because he wasn't born here. There's actually a story about that in the early '90s. There was an Elseworlds thing where Superman gets elected president, and they changed the law so that he can be elected president. It's funny.
That's awesome.
And kind of scary, really. But
if I was him, I'd be like, he's actually from Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not changing the law. We're bending it.
We're just bending a little bit. Yeah. But then. I don't know. DC is a little harder for me to think.
I think Kingpin could be elected. if he really wanted to.
No, I'm trying to think of DC people.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, wait, okay, alright.
But I'm just tossing it out.
Oh, he probably could.
I
Yeah.
think he could.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, probably. Well, if we're talking about evil guys that are trying to seem like they're not evil, especially right now, I'd say Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've been complaining for a while that Norman Osborn has kind of become Marvel's Lex Luthor, so only stands to reason.
Mm-hmm. He will become the Goblex.
Well, anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll do one more of these next week. We still have lots of questions, so we will answer more of your questions next week on the final part of the multi-topic extravaganza, the sequel. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local comic book store.
See you later.
Support it with beams, so that it does not fall down.
Make sure it has a firm foundation.
Foundations are important, especially when you're putting on makeup.
And it's also a very good Isaac Asimov novel. Trilogy. Foundation.
I've seen The Fountain, which is much different.
It's entirely different. Why are we both dooms, Vince?
I don't know.
I don't either. I'm just going to be a clone of whatever character you're doing. I don't understand.
I'm trying to think of what... I don't know what we're yelling about.
Me neither, but I'm angry.
Verily. I am Thor.
Verily, I say unto you, eat these chips.
Have you noticed that when a man is a god, he's half in British? I don't understand it.